Welcome to Buy, Hold, Sell. I'm Jeremy Hook from TMS Capital. Joining me today on the panel is Roger Montgomery from Montgomery and Neil Carter from IFM Investors. Well, Australian residential property has performed particularly well, but share investors will know that property portals have done even better. REA Group has been a 10-bagger over the last decade, and it's soon to be joined on ASX by a competitor, Domain. Fairfax announcing that they will spin off the Domain Group. Roger, I'll start with you. The mergers have done particularly well. How do you think Domain will go?
Look, if they can achieve their stated targets of growing their $100 million EBIT to $200 million EBIT within 3 years, I think that'll be popular with a lot of managers. It'll be interesting whether or not they can actually achieve that. I suspect for the first 44 days, while Anthony Catalano's options, they have to calculate the VWAP on his options. Yeah. I suspect there won't be much by way of announcements until after that. But I think we'll see a steady stream of announcements following that that'll encourage the market. Okay,
very good. Cynical perhaps, but Neil, over to you. Now, what's left after the spin-off for Fairfax? Is there anything of interest for an investor there?
I think the kind of Fairfax rump, the old media assets, do look relatively unsexy compared to the high growth sort of internet assets, but they still are prodigious cash flow generators, and I think with the upcoming media laws there's likely to be corporate interest as well, so I wouldn't write them off entirely.
Yeah, and in fact you've got to remember that they'll continue to own a majority stake of Domain, so there's value in that too.
Yeah, definitely. Just Neil, back with REA post the listing of Domain, how do you think REA may be affected?
I don't think I don't think it'll be affected in a big negative way. Having Domain listed will, I think, encourage price discipline, and I think that probably is good for both players.
Okay, Roger, REA, will there be a relative effect on its share price?
I think there's two aspects to the question. The first one is that there may be some selling of REA by fund managers to buy Domain. That's possible. In terms of the business itself, I think what you'll find is you might actually see as Domain's forced to articulate its strategic direction to a wider band of stakeholders, that you might see more of a response from REA. You might find that they start announcing some things that maybe previously they wouldn't have.
Okay. Are the two businesses comparable?
No. And I'll tell you why I say that. And it is a controversial idea. But I believe that really REA, its strategic direction is really dependent on the idea of just rolling out more of what it's doing at a higher price point and selling more stuff. So we saw that with its recent announcement of selling NAB home loans, for example. Right, yeah. Whereas Domain, from the conversations we've had with Anthony Catalano and Domain, it strikes me that they're trying to embed themselves in the entire life cycle of the real estate buyer, then use that data and artificial intelligence to try and predict when someone might buy and sell that information to real estate agents. So that's completely different strategic direction to REA.
Okay. Neil, any other differences or similarities you'd notice in the different businesses?
I mean, REA I think has a broader national footprint, whereas Domain is more concentrated in certain areas. I mean, certain very high value areas like the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And I think another key difference is REA has the offshore expansion, which largely acquired through the acquisition of iProperty Group. So there are some subtle differences, but investors inevitably will compare the two very closely.
Yeah, geographically different. So at the end, which one do you prefer?
I think it's going to be really interesting. I suspect that Domain is going to be higher growth over the next 5 years because it's starting from a smaller base. I think it's probably a 20 to 25% grower versus about 15% for REA, and they're probably going to trade on similar multiples. So on that basis, I'd probably edge for a Domain.
Okay. Roger, with the announcement of the listing, Fairfax gave some numbers. The growth has slowed with Domain. REA still growing relatively well. Which one do you prefer?
At this stage of the property cycle where the property market's maturing and you find listings actually start creeping up after 5 years of declines, I think it makes sense to have both.
Okay, well, it's certainly a very interesting part of the market. Great to have something to compare REA against, and we'll see when it lists very soon how it goes.